All right, well, we will officially call our meeting to order. This is the Commissioners' Principal Advisory Council meeting, December 14th, 2023. And I am delighted to introduce Brian Ehrenberg from Boyd County, principal at Ponderosa Elementary School. He has recently been named our new PRAC chairperson. So I'm going to go ahead and turn it over to Brian. Item 1.
All right. First, I want to tell everybody welcome. Thanks for being here. I know it's a busy day to be doing this. I've got a jazz concert, and then I got to go listen to third graders rap in a little bit. So we're going to try to get through this quickly, but take some time to enjoy. So first, I want to tell you guys that we're going to have Robin Fields Kenny here to speak with us, and I want to go ahead and let you prompt for questions. So if you guys have any questions, be thinking about that. I know there's going to be some time for some Q&A after she speaks. So just wanted to let you guys know, and I want to go ahead and welcome Ms. Fields Kenny for taking some time to be with us today.
Thank you so much, Chair. It's a pleasure to be here with you this morning, bringing welcomes from the Kentucky Department of Education. You do have a really full agenda today. I looked at all the items and I was like, how far do Roman numerals go? You got a lot of things going on. We do appreciate your participation in advisory committees on behalf of the Commissioner of the Department of Education. It's a valuable way for us to make sure that your voice is heard, and you always make us think of things that we hadn't thought of. So I will try to save just a few minutes at the end to invite your questions. Just really wanted to let you know a little bit about things that have been going on here at the Department of Education. I was appointed the interim commissioner on September 30th of this year, and so I've been on the job for a couple months now. Really enjoying myself. It's challenging, but it's rewarding at the same time. My former role, for some of you that I may not have met yet, I was the Associate Commissioner in the Office of Finance and Operations here, where I had been serving for the last 8 years. And in that area, I would work with your local school districts on all kinds of operations and logistic things that you face every day, trying to take those things off your plate so you can really focus on teaching and learning. And so that includes whether you're buying a bus or you're building a building, whether you're waiting for your SEEK payment to come, school health, and school and community nutrition, all those areas were under my purview. So I've had a really good experience working with local school districts and department staff on operations and finance. In my new position, I've learned all kinds of things about things we do here at the department, more on the instructional side, and supports to students, families, and staff at local school districts. And I'm really enjoying that. It's fun that your chair said that he was going to listen to a concert and rap, and I've also had the pleasure of doing a little bit of seeing students in action myself at some local school districts. I've had the pleasure of traveling around and seeing vibrant learning experiences happening in our classrooms, and also saw a great a cappella group that actually I brought their video back to share with the KDE staff here so that they can see the great things that are going on in your schools. It's been a lot of fun. My term as interim commissioner will be until we find the next permanent commissioner of education. And we have engaged an executive search firm. We are under contract with that firm now to help us find the next commissioner, help us find those quality candidates. We actually have a special called Kentucky Board of Education meeting later this afternoon to work with that firm a little bit more as we prepare for the posting of our position for the commissioner. So that's today. I feel like we're moving forward now. We're actually starting the process. Our search firm feels that although it is very aggressive, they feel that they can have candidates to us for consideration and interview and selection, so that we can actually have the candidate confirmed by the Kentucky Senate, which is a new requirement for us in this upcoming General Assembly session. So they think in this upcoming session, we will have a candidate ready for confirmation. And our goal would be that we have our new commissioner starting with us by July 1st of 2024. So we'll be working very hard to try to accomplish that, while still being very thorough and thoughtful about the next person that will come on as commissioner. Some of the things that we've also been working on just during sort of this interim time is continuing the work of United We Learn, which is an initiative by the Kentucky Board of Education and KDE to really look at what education will look like in the future for our students now and in the future. And, you know, we've done this through a ground up grassroots effort, asking Kentuckians overall, what do they think we really need to focus on to improve education? And that is, we see vibrant learning experiences for our student being needed more now than ever. And I see that happening in Kentucky classrooms already, but we really need it for each and every child in every single district. And so a focus on vibrant learning experiences. And as part of that, I see on your agenda, you're going to talk about high quality instructional resources. So that is a great way for us to talk about one aspect of vibrant learning experiences for students. We also heard innovation, especially in assessment. And as we talk about new ways of learning, especially as students have at their fingertips, literally a cell phone that can basically, they can ask Siri just about anything and get the answer. We know that we're going to have to teach and learn differently. As a result of that, we may need innovation in our assessments to be able to measure that and see what our students are doing. And then finally, community engagement, which is a really big piece right now that we're seeing. Lots of communities wanting more input in the educational process, and also our districts wanting to be able to fulfill the needs of their communities through education. And so those are the three big areas. So we're working real hard on continuing those things and development of what that will look like for our Kentucky students. We do have a General Assembly session coming up in January. So as soon as we get through the holidays, we're right at it with the General Assembly knocking on our door. And we have, I've spent a lot of time with the General Assembly members individually and collectively, trying to impress upon them the importance of making informed educational decisions on behalf of all of us, and making sure that they realize the Department of Education and our local school districts are here to share information, share data, making sure that they're talking to the people that work in this each and every day, really the business and subject matter experts. So I think most of those visits have been very well received, and we are getting lots of questions from our General Assembly to provide information and data. And then finally, two areas that I know you're going to tackle one of these on your agenda today. So I'm so pleased to see the relevance of this conversation. Of course, recruitment and retention of staff for our local school districts is just still very, very challenging. And so some of our budget requests are asking for some assistance and funding to tackle some of that. But then the other big area is chronic absenteeism, which is facing Kentucky, but also almost every other state in the nation is seeing this chronic absenteeism of our students. And some of that ties back to our earlier discussion about vibrant learning experiences. You know, we have to really create environments that kids want to come to school, but we can't do this alone. District administrators, teachers, we can't do it by ourselves. We really will need the help of our community members, parents. We'll need the help of law enforcement in some unfortunate cases. And so all of that really weighing into chronic absenteeism for Kentucky students. So that's sort of a quick snapshot of some of the things going on here at the Kentucky Department of Education. I'm happy to spend a few minutes, Chair, if we have a few minutes, just to see what might be on the minds of your principals.
And no worries. I'll just ask that first, thank you for taking the time out to meet with us, and then just ask that anybody has a question, unmute and identify yourself, and then ask your question.
Nick Brooks, the principal at Wolfe County Middle School. The confirmation process in the Senate, do we know what that looks like, and what happens if that selection doesn't get confirmed, and what that timeline might look like as well?
Sure. Thank you, Nick. That's a good question. The confirmation process is actually set forth in statute, very similar to other confirmation processes that happen for other members, either of the executive branch. In fact, the Kentucky Board of Education members are confirmed by the Senate. So it's a very statutorily driven process. If the candidate is not confirmed, then we would start all over again. We would look for another quality candidate that can be confirmed. Some of the things that we're trying to do to make sure that when we get to that confirmation by the Senate is one that we only have to do one time. We have been reaching out and talking with a representative of the General Assembly who has been designated to sort of be our point person that we communicate with. And really just trying to be very transparent and open about our process. So you can go out on the Kentucky Department of Education website, and you'll see there is a space dedicated to our search for our new commissioner, which General Assembly members, as well as just any member of the public, as well as school district people, can go out and follow sort of our process. The board will be appointing an interview committee of the full board today. And so they'll be charged with the work of really starting the process, working with the search firm and identifying those candidates. So our goal is to keep that process very transparent, open, and communications with the General Assembly also transparent and open, so that we don't get to the confirmation process and have a surprise. Unfortunately, we are aware that Mississippi did have that happen. Mississippi had a very similar process to us, and they were not interacting with their General Assembly on the front end, and they got to confirmation and their candidate was not confirmed. And so I think we all have learned from that, as well as it's just the right thing to do. The General Assembly has spoken through law that they will have this ability. So we want to get it right the first time. So thanks so much for the question. Well, Chair, I'll turn it back over to you. And thank you so much for allowing me to just join you for a few minutes. Of course, if you have any questions at any time, you can reach out to us here at the Department of Education. We're happy to help you in any way we can. And if I don't have an opportunity before then, I'm wishing you all a happy holidays and hope that you all get some rest, because I know, being a principal is a really hard, busy job. And remember to take a few minutes for yourself to kind of step back, recharge, and get ready for the spring and all that it affords with our students. So thank you so much for all that you do.
Thank you, Mrs. Kenny. We appreciate it. All right, that takes us on to number 2 here in our agenda, the roll call of members. So I would ask that first that you take a second. In the chat was posted the attendance form. It's also here on the screen to do a digital sign-in, but I'm going to go through. So when I call your name, just unmute and let me know that you're here. And we'll go through it. So Wayne Ackerman. Erica Bowles. Nick Brooks.
I'm here.
Thank you. Ashley Bird. Okay. Beth Davidson. Kevin Garner. Okay. Jared Hankins.
Yes, I'm here.
Thank you. Sarah Kies.
I'm here.
Thank you. Carla Collodi. Okay. Anne Marie Landry. She might be showing up a little late. Robert Lightning. Katrina McDermott. Amy Rhodes.
I'm here.
Thank you. Matt Schaefer. Peggy Sinclair Morris. And Sarah Woodford. All right. Thank you. We'll move on to slide 3 here, the agenda approval. Now, I do have to take motions and approve. So I'm going to ask that when you make a motion, you unmute and you say your name, and then you voice your yes. So I'm going to ask for approval of the agenda that was sent out previously.
Nick Brooks, I'll make that motion to approve the agenda.
Thank you, Nick.
Amy Rhodes, I'll second the motion to approve the agenda.
Okay, Amy, thank you so much. And then I'll ask that all those that are in favor of the motion, please just put in the chat your response there, and that way we can have that recorded there. Okay, looks like it carries. Motion approves. All right, then I'll move us to number 4 here, approving the summary of last meeting, and I will ask for approval of the summary again provided. I believe in the notes, correct? Yeah, there's the summary. Again, I just need you to unmute and say your name and express that you wish to make a motion.
Sarah Cos, I approve the summary minutes.
Thank you. We have a first. Do we have a second?
Nick Brooks, I'll second.
Thank you, Nick. And again, please express your approval in the chat.
And Brian, for our attendance purposes, I think Robert Lightning joined the group, joined the meeting. Just wanted to verify, Mr. Lightning, are you here?
I saw him pop up, but I haven't heard him. If he's trying, then maybe we need to unmute. It could just be that it's a bad connection. Who knows?
Right. Yeah, and if you're here, you can just put here in the chat, Mr. Lightning.
Perfect. All right. Well, our next option here is option number 5. We have a presentation by Ms. Allison Gregory, the importance of high quality instructional resources. So I will turn that over to her.
All right, just want to verify, Stacy, can you see my screen and is it the right view?
Yes, it looks great.
All right, awesome. Good morning, guys. For many of you, I'm seeing familiar faces. So I just really appreciate being able to still connect with principals. My name is Allison Gregory, if we haven't met before. And so at July 1, I transitioned over to a state regional literacy director in the Office of Teaching and Learning, the Division of Early Literacy. And so I'm coming to you today to talk about just the importance of high quality instructional resources. Couple of things I want to say before we begin. Number one, put all your questions in the chat. There will be pausing points for me to take questions, but my disclaimer is always, I probably don't have all the answers. But what I do have is the willingness to find those answers for you and to ask the right people. So I think sometimes people think I need to have all the answers, and I'm going to tell you, I probably don't, but I will get those for you as we go. And so the other piece that I'm going to share with you today is you're going to hear me say things like early literacy, and some of you are representative of middle or high school. And so I've been able and blessed to serve as a high school principal, as an elementary principal, a middle school assistant principal. And I think that everybody in this room would agree that literacy is important at all levels, and that it most definitely starts at early literacy. So I'm going to push on you not to turn your ears off when you hear early literacy, because those of us at middle and high school, we absolutely know it impacts the work we do with students at those levels. All right, so let's go ahead and get started. What I do want you to do in the chat for me, you know I'm interactive. I just want you to put in from 1 to 5 a rating system. What is your current knowledge or dealings with high quality instructional resources right now? So 1 being, this will be the first time I've ever seen this in my life, Allison. 5 being, I could probably do this presentation for you. All right, awesome. Well-versed. Okay, so I am preaching to the choir here, but please make sure that you're asking me questions. And so when we think about why early literacy, why the push from the State Department about early literacy, I'm just going to take a moment and let you digest what you're seeing on the screen as far as the data. I don't think anybody is okay with what we're seeing. And always, because you're leaders in our state and you're representing our entire state, it can't just be about, well, my school's doing well or my district's doing well. I think we want the entire Commonwealth doing well. And absolutely, the demographics that you're seeing by subgroup, this is not okay. But just as a whole, with 3rd grade reading, guys, we've got over 50% of our kids not proficient in reading. So we know that we have to do something. And then if you look at the national data, the NAEP data for 4th graders last year, only 32% of our 4th graders were proficient or above. And when I talk to my teachers, or when I used to, data is one thing, putting it with faces is another, right? And so we look at, what does this percent have to do with me in my classroom? This visual says it all to me, because when I say to teachers, well, which students of these are you okay with not being proficient at the end of the school year? And we start taking faces off. To me, like still today, guys, and I've shared this with many people, this makes me have goosebumps. I'm not okay with that. None of us should be okay with that. And so that urgency is important. And so in 2022, Senate Bill 9, which will be known now as the Read to Succeed Act, was passed. Honestly, by both sides of the aisle, because it is so, so important to our students and our future in the Commonwealth. And so it laid out comprehensive actions that we needed to take in order to improve those outcomes. And so you see these bulleted items here, and I'm just going to touch really quickly on each one and what that means, because again, as leaders in this state, when people ask us about it, we've got to be able to talk to it, right? And be able to say, well, this is the why. And so if we look at the early intervention piece, we know now in this year that our districts had to implement an approved KDE screener and diagnostic, because we got to know where kids are in order to know what we need to do to intervene if necessary. And so that happened this year. Many of our schools and districts were already giving diagnostics and screeners. We just needed to make sure that they were validated. And so also, I'm trying to see if I see a couple of elementary principals on here. The other thing that was implemented this year that we were responsible for as principals was a reading improvement plan. All right. And so that honestly has caused a little bit of stress with principals. And you guys know me, I'm going to push a little bit, and I'm going to say things that might ruffle feathers, but it's for all the right reasons. And so we had some principals in districts saying, oh my goodness, we cannot handle all of these reading improvement plans that we're going to have to be writing now because our kids are not progressing. And so I'm going to push on you to say, if that is us, then we don't have an intervention issue. We have a tier 1 instructional issue, right? And so that's just in it. With knowledge is power for us too as leaders. So it's not like we have to say, woe is me, but that is the lens that I'm pushing principals and leaders to understand, that if you're looking at over half of your kids need a reading improvement plan, then I need you to be urgently looking at what are we doing during tier 1. And I'm sorry that I start yelling, but y'all know I get passionate about that. Okay. So that's one thing that I'll push on you to really think about and talk to your colleagues about if they are really stressed is, hey, let's back it up and let's be looking at some tier 1. And then we've also provided a template for any district, like, hey, we don't really know how to lay this out. That template is there. One caution I will give you is we have tried to lay out a template that encompasses everything that we really should be filtering through. So even if you make your own, I would please beg you to kind of cross-reference. Do we have everything on our reading improvement plan that would be suggested from the state? And then the next one is we know we can't do it alone, that we've got to partner with our parents and community in this process. And so we've created a read at home plan, all right, and a family guide, and it is super comprehensive. So as a principal, I want you to be thinking about, do I give it all at once? Are there pieces that I share? And again, ruffling feathers, we're not just going to send that home in an email, right? So what are the protocols and the practices that we have in our schools that we can sit down with a parent and show them this guide and be able to post-it note or earmark, like, hey, these are some things that you really could do at home to help with that. So we've got the family guide, and then we've also partnered with the Kentucky Collaborative for Families and Schools to develop guidance around that high impact. And all of these are links that I'll send to Stacy and be able to send out to you guys. It's available on KDE's website as well. So that also is happening too. And then the last thing that I'm going to say that was a piece of the legislation was talking about teacher certification. So as of December 13th, that has passed through. Sorry, I'm looking at several different screens here, but I just want to give you updated information to the date. December 13th, that passed through EPSB, the Praxis Teaching Reading. So this test is an effective evaluation of reading instruction, knowledge, and skills as required by KRS 164.306. So in August 1st of 2024, our teachers coming out of colleges are going to have to pass that piece of the Praxis. And I don't know if that gets you excited, but it does me, because I know that they're going to be coming to us with that knowledge they're needing of teaching reading. So then this is my whole purpose for today. Within Senate Bill 156, we also know that now it discussed the adoption of our high quality comprehensive reading program K through 3. All right. So I'm going to want you to look at that second bullet. I'm not going to read to you. I'm going to ask you to read that. And then I want you to put in the chat, okay, words that stand out to you, single words that stand out to you about the importance of this piece, what it did for us. All right, so if you'll just put in the chat, what's a word that stands out to you? Thanks, Sarah. Common. Comprehensive, yes. All right, a couple of things. Number one, the first thing that stands out to me, guys, is shall. This is not an option, okay? And I'm okay with that. I'm okay with that because every baby in this state deserves high quality instructional resources and instruction. So I appreciate that the law now states shall, because we should be doing this for our kids anyways, but this law makes sure it's happening. And then common, all right, a common comprehensive means like every school's not doing something different, because we do understand the transiency within districts as well. And so we definitely wanted that common comprehensive, meaning all parts of reading. We can't just cover foundational skills and not the language comprehension. It has to have both. And that too is so key. And it's got to be determined reliable and valid. Well, what we're saying at the State Department is it's a green rated resource on ed reports. And we even go further as to say the top 3, in our opinion, that are vetted, but there are multiple green rated resources that you can utilize. Now, again, I see Jared on here. He's not elementary. I see it is required of K through 3. Would it be a good practice for all of us to be looking at high quality instructional resources at all levels in our schools? Absolutely. So I would say start looking at those ed reports and really having those discussions of, do we have high quality instructional resources? Now, what resource assists do we have for districts? So one of the very first things I'm going to tell you that's not on this screen that I hope you will write down is the model curriculum framework was created for all districts in the state who desire to go through this process of adopting a high quality instructional resource. So the curriculum development process is a piece of the model curriculum framework. All right. And so within that, you're going to have a consumer guide, and that's what's linked here because I'm talking to the law of K through 3. But there is a reading and writing instructional resources consumer guide. So if you have a district who feels like, well, we don't even know where to start, I would start with this guide that guides your people through looking at what's going to work for our district, for our context, where we are in the state. And then definitely looking at, and that whole process, the model curriculum framework CDP process, that takes you through considering, is it explicit? Is it systematic? Is it cumulative? As you're going through that adoption process. Okay, so I already spoke to this a little bit, but why? Because prevention is our best intervention. And so I would definitely share this with teachers. Meaning, if we can intervene at the kindergarten level with literacy and get them caught up then, the minutes, it takes 15 to 30 minutes over a shorter amount of time. And those of us who have taught or worked in an elementary school, even middle and high school, the amount of time they will need for intervention, look, in 3rd grade, it's 90 minutes. That's the starting point, to 3 hours a day. I don't know any elementary principal that has that kind of time in their master schedule. I'm just being honest, right? And then we've got principals that are faced with the, do I take them out of other classes? And we know what the data says about that, right? So this prevention is so key of being at the early grades. All right, so you heard me at the beginning talking about, like, it starts with tier 1. So that would be my action item for you to-do list. Like, where am I tier 1 with my school? And push on your district. Where are we tier 1? And that starts with a common instructional vision. We know that from leading schools. We have to have a vision of where we're going, what we're doing. And so what is our vision? Okay, for instruction. And you can develop this vision holistically, or we push on you to say, what's your ELA vision? What's your math vision? What's your social, like, what is your vision for kids? And then from there, we know the next 3 pieces are so key, right? We've got to have the resource for teachers to teach from. And then it can't just stop with giving you that resource. And, you know, I'm on the other side of my career, meaning I've been here a while now. And so I do remember, you know, a textbook was given to me like that. There was no professional learning that took place with that, right? And so I do think through the years we've gotten better with that, but I do think we can continue to grow. So just adopting and selecting that HQ hour is not going to be enough for our teachers. We've got to make sure that we offer them professional learning, but guys, it cannot be a one shot. Like, here's your 6 hours on July 28th. Absolutely not. We've got to think about how can we embed these supports throughout. And so those of you who have already have an HQ hour in place, that's a checkpoint for you. Am I embedding the professional learning throughout? And if they are pushing back, what are the reasonings? Are there pieces of it that we don't understand? And then from that, leading to high quality instruction and the coaching point. And those of you who know me on the screen, you know how passionate I am about coaching, for sure. And so we've got to make sure that that is translating, those 2 things are translating into high quality instruction to improve student outcomes. And again, I know I'm talking to the choir, but this is for those of you in this process right now. Those are some great checkpoints for you. And that may be just with your leadership team, you stop and ask, are we doing this? What's our area for growth? What's our strength area here with our tier 1 instruction? We've spent too many years spending too much time on 2 and 3 when we get the most bang for our buck looking at tier 1. Doesn't mean to ignore it. So then let's think of, and again, you can give me a thumbs up or you can just stare at me blankly. It's okay. I'm going to pretend everybody's super excited about this content. But what I hear a lot from teachers when I start to talk about high quality instructional resources, the pushback is always, well, it's going to be scripted, or it takes my, flexibility away from me. But here's where I'm going to push us on is I was that teacher that in my first 2 years of school, I was at school till 6 or 7 at night. And I don't know if anybody else is in here, but that burnout is real. And so when we look at instructional time, I just want you to see that screen. 250 hours per year developing or selecting instructional resources. That's a lot of time, and that is not exaggerated. That's data, real data for you to be able to use with teachers. And then students are spending out of that 581 of 720 available hours on assignments that aren't high quality. And so we'll say, well, what do you mean, Allison, they're not high quality? Because I've spent a lot of time curating or creating those resources. But the reality is a lot of our teachers, I shouldn't say nobody, has a doctorate in creating curriculum or writing curriculum. That's not what we're trained to do normally. And so when we think about where our teachers going to get these resources, like think about our own experience. We're going to Google, we're going to Pinterest. For many years, we were going to Teachers Pay Teachers, maybe still. And we were assuming that because it said it covers RL 2.2, et cetera, that it really wasn't to the rigor. The problem is we quickly realized, those of us who are in the principal seat or even the highest level teachers like, this isn't rigorous enough. This isn't touching what the standard really says that we should be doing. And so we realized that. And I'm going to stop for just a second and just give you a quick personal story of that. In 2008, my first year as a high school assistant principal, I had a parent irate in my office. I mean, in tears in my office, who was crying and said, I need you, Ms. Gregory, to explain to me how my student has a 4.0 in this school and cannot make benchmark on ACT. That's the reality. And it probably isn't just my reality, right? And so while our teachers are spinning their wheels and working their hardest to get these resources, they just don't have the time to pour in to say, is it validated? Is it, high quality? And so that is a plus for the why. The why of adopting an HQR is because it is vetted, that it has gone through this extensive review process and rubric process to say, yes, it is rigorous enough. Absolutely, it is. Because here's the problem, the result of teacher-created resources. And again, this isn't about making teachers feel bad, because I think about all the things I created, right, that I thought were just fabulous. But the problem is they're succeeding in our classrooms, but they're not succeeding when they get to those grade level standards, which we know through the NAEP or the ACT or the Kentucky Summative Assessment. I mean, that's the reality. Okay, I'm going to stop there because I got real preachy. I'm really sorry, Stacy. I'm okay on time, right? Okay. Do we have any questions, concerns, comments? Except be quiet, because I still got a few more slides. Okay. All right. So definition of HQRs. If we haven't started this conversation with our teachers, we need to be, or at the district level, because again, July 1 is when it has to be adopted. But we can't wait till June 30th, because you've got to plan your professional learning around that. And we've got to get the resources in, because that'll be frustration number one if we have bought an HQR or not. Many of them are free, guys, free. Open resources, but if they have and we don't get the professional learning, we're setting teachers and students up for failure. That's the bottom line, or at least for frustration. So KDE's definition is it has to be aligned. Here's what I need you to know. The committee that worked with Ed Reports, if it's green on Ed Reports, it means it meets 80% of our standards. All right. So it doesn't take away the fact that we should still be looking at standards and making sure that the HQR we choose, what is missing. It has to be research-based and or externally validated. So again, sticking to those Ed Reports green is going to help you out with that. Comprehensive, we've talked through, and you heard Interim Commissioner talk about fostering that vibrant student experience. We've got to do that for our kids. So we're looking for resources. Free from bias and accessible for all students. But this has to come, identifying your HQR has to come after looking at your vision and what does our district need. You need to drive it from your context, your local context. And so specifically looking at literacy HQRs, this is the transition we're looking at making when we looked at structured literacy. So definitely that phonics scope and sequence needs to be there. And, something that has been said multiple times is we're just focused on phonics. No, we are not. Absolutely not. You've got to have all pieces. And there are 3 big components of word recognition. And then there are 5 of language comprehension. You've got to have a comprehensive system that does both. But I love that it calls for authentic, complex text. So when we put this HQR in front of our kids and students, the first thing that teachers are going to say is what? Put it in the chat. What are they usually going to say with the HQR when it's to the rigor of the true standard? Oh, thank goodness. I see Sarah typing. Yes, it's too hard for my kids. Too hard. We put the ceiling on kids immediately instead of pushing, right? They will rise to our expectations every time. Thanks, Amy. I see yours too. All right. So now on here, I'm going to read this to you. Okay. As I'm reading it, I need you to think of what is the main idea. What's the central idea of this paragraph? And I'm going to give you about 30 seconds after I read it, and then I need you to put it in the chat. Much depended on the two overnight batsmen, but this duo perished either side of lunch, the latter a little unfortunate to be adjudged the leg before, and with Andrew Simmons too. Being shown the dreaded finger off an inside edge, the inevitable beckoned. Bar the pyrotechnics of Michael Clark in the 9th wicket. Okay, just need you thinking, what is the main idea there? I wish I could take a picture of your faces. If you'll put that in the chat, if you know. If you don't, just put a question mark, or you can react with any type of emoji that you'd like. Sarah. Go, Nick Brooks. Okay. Nick, how did you know this was about cricket? I'm going to need you to unmute and tell the committee.
It's something to do with sports, and that's something I've been doing since I could walk. Cricket, wicket,
Playing cricket?
No, not cricket, but I watch any and all sports. But I know batsman and wicket, and those terms relate to the sport of cricket. So
I need to take you on the road with me. So, Sarah, I'm going to pick on you. Sarah, why did you not know what this was about? Because you could read every word. Will you agree with me on that? Could you decode every word in that paragraph?
Yes, absolutely. But I had no clue as soon as I read the first sentence and it says batsman, I was like, okay, is that like some sort of like person sitting outside watching people? Like, I didn't know what that word meant. Or wicket, I didn't know what that word meant. I didn't know what a lot of the words actually meant.
In context.
Yes.
Like, I know what pyrotechnics is, but not in the context of this paragraph,
absolutely.
right? I don't know what a batsman is. Here's the bottom line. When you're looking at HQRs, I need you to feel like you see Allison in your thought bubble. Background knowledge is essential to kids for us to build. The reason Nick could understand this is because he's got background knowledge of cricket. He understood what the vocabulary was. So even though our kids can decode, when they get to high school, to middle school, and we've got really content-specific things, even though they can decode the words, they're not going to be able to be successful because they don't have the background knowledge. So we push on you to choose a knowledge-building HQR. That is imperative for our kids. That promotes them to engage in deep learning about a subject. And so I see at the elementary levels a lot of room transformations, and that is awesome. That is vibrant for kids, a great learning experience. But if it's the first day they've ever had that experience, I would push on them to do a knowledge-based piece, like a unit on that ends with a room transformation, right? And so many of the HQRs you're going to be looking at are knowledge-based. So I'd push you to look at that versus something with a balanced approach. So again, coming back to it, at the end of the day, I want us to really focus on tier 1, which giving every kid access to that high quality instructional resource is going to do that. Okay. These are resources available to you. Also know that one piece of the structured literacy approach of supporting teachers is we have offered language essentials for teaching reading and spelling free to every educator K through 5 in this state. We're in year 2 of that. Cohort 3 starts next year, and that's the last year that we will have a cohort as of now. And so if you don't have your K through 5 teachers involved with that, I would really urge you to do that. It's a great professional development experience that the state is providing for us. And administrators, if you're an elementary administrators, we have it for letters for administrators too, about talking about how to make that shift, how to make that change. And there's a cohort that I lead with that as well. So that is it. I have gotten on my soapbox enough. But again, I just want you to know, you guys know me. Email still the same at the State Department. Please reach out to me. Let me know if there's anything that I can do for your district. I told you I'm a director, and I am, but I'm not the only one. So I cover the western side of the state, but we have 5 total directors and 25 literacy coaches. Okay. All right. Any questions before I end? Or concerns, comments?
There was a question about timeline from Sarah, but you may have addressed it as you went through the presentation.
Okay.
That was in the chat.
All right. Well, thank you, P3. Thank you, Prac, for allowing me to be here. And hopefully you've made a connection. And I'll send this slideshow presentation to Stacy with the resources, and reach out if you need anything.
Thank you, Ms. Gregory. We appreciate you being here, and enjoy the resources. It'll be some stuff for us to dive into. All right, next on our agenda, we have Florence Chang and Christina Watford speaking to us about chronic absenteeism.
Yes, thank you, everyone. My name is Florence Chang, and I've got with me Christina Watford. We're going to be giving you some background today about chronic absenteeism. You all probably already know this. This is like the topic of the year when it comes to what's happening in education. So we will be giving you some information on data and some of the reasons why students are missing school, and then give you some strategies, and hopefully have just a couple minutes for you all to share anything that might be helping in your schools. So next slide, please. Okay, so this is just an overview of the data around chronic absenteeism in Kentucky. One of the things, just a quick reminder, it's not the same as truancy. Chronic absenteeism is any kid who misses at least 10% of instructional time, and that can be either unexcused or excused. So it includes both like the suspensions, the illnesses, as well as things just like missing school for doctor's appointments or getting to school late. All of those minutes add up into that 10% of missed time. And you have to be at least enrolled in the school 10 days for your student to count into the calculation. So what we see is that chronic absenteeism actually was already going up a little bit before the pandemic. So we were tracking like in the 2015-16 all the way to the 2020, it was already inching up a little bit. So in 16-17, 17% of students in Kentucky were chronically absent. The most recent data from this past year, that's gone up to 30%. And so what that translates to in terms of numbers, that's almost 200,000 students that were chronically absent last year. So it's about 198. So it's an enormous amount of students missing time. And then similar to like Allison's data that she showed earlier, that there are disparities between groups. So we see that these rates, even though 30% is the average, for certain groups of students, it's much higher. So among the homeless, economically disadvantaged, students with a disability, foster care, Black African-American students, we see among those groups, they have significantly higher chronic absenteeism rates. We also see that this is not just, it used to be just a high school problem. It's not anymore. It's elementary, middle. It's also showing to impact students that previously had pretty good attendance. So something has shifted, and that's what we kind of want to talk to you all about today. And also to note, this is happening nationally and internationally. So we see this happening in different countries as well. Next slide, please. So there are 4 major reasons why kids are missing school, and this comes from Attendance Works, which is an awesome resource we'll provide to you. But the 4 reasons listed here are not necessarily mutually exclusive, so kids can fall into more than one of these, but they are distinct enough that depending on why your student is missing school, there would be different approaches. So one of the reasons is just barriers, something keeping the kids from coming to school. They want to be at school, but there's something going on that's keeping them from coming. So this could be things like home responsibilities, things happening in their community, transportation challenges. So those are just some reasons that might be keeping the kids from being able to physically come to school. What we're seeing kind of an increase of is aversion, which is this idea that there's some reason that the kids don't want to come to school. So this goes back to like the academic struggles, behavior issues. Sometimes it's something about the school climate, problems with peers, bullying. And then, of course, you all have seen the national data and the local data on the increase of anxiety and mental health issues. So some aversion is keeping students from wanting to come to school. Another reason is disengagement. So this is just not having a connection for whatever reason, being bored, maybe not having enrichment activities, and then habits formed during COVID. So I just want to talk just briefly about that, because what does that mean, habits formed during COVID? Well, one of the interesting things that's happening now is there are surveys, like the Gallup survey just did a survey of teens. And one of the things they're finding now is more than half of teens are spending 4 to 5 hours on social media. So, you know, when you think about what Allison just talked about, when we love 4 to 5 hours that they come home and read and work with their families, you know, 4 to 5 hours is an enormous amount of time that we're losing kids. They're choosing to use their time in a different way. They're also, what this also translates to is they're spending less time with people. So they're spending more time with their devices. And again, that might be connected mental health wise to the anxiety piece. As they are alone more, they're not getting those social interactions, supports, practicing social skills. And that is kind of a snowball effect with the anxiety. So there's disengagement. And then the last one is misconceptions. And this is just around things like maybe being more conservative about keeping your kids home. Before, you might have sent, parents might have been more willing to send their kid in with a runny nose. And maybe now because of COVID, it's a little bit like, oh, well, let's be careful and not spread. So there's a little bit of some misconceptions about when do kids need to stay home for illnesses. And then also just that when you ask parents, like, or kids, how many days have you missed this year? They tend to underestimate. So they don't realize like, hey, I've actually missed a lot more than I realize. And so it just means like, if you leave for a doctor's appointment, you know, be mindful about getting them back into school versus just leaving for the whole day and things like that. So there are misconceptions. Okay, so that's enough about the reasons why kids are missing. Christina is going to talk about what can we do? What are some strategies that we're seeing as helpful? Oh, you're muted.
I told myself I was not going to do that. Okay, so thank you all for letting me share with you today. When we're looking at the strategies to address chronic absenteeism, one thing that we can probably all agree on is that chronic absenteeism requires a comprehensive approach and that all of the staff members in your school have to contribute towards that approach. So first, we need to start by looking at how we foster a welcoming and supportive culture for students and for adults, using positive and nurturing language that emphasizes the well-being for everyone in the school and not just for students. This includes nurturing our adults. Students know when staff members are happy and when they're healthy, and then that feeds into the culture and the climate of the building, which can have an impact on whether or not students are coming to school. Looking at the environment, looking at the enrichment and extracurricular activities that are offered in the school, use of advisories and morning meetings that help to provide some connection between students and teachers that help to establish those trusting relationships, using trauma-informed practices and the trauma-informed practices toolkit That helps to engage students through the trauma lens, right? And making sure that we are addressing the needs that each individual student has. Also, along with that, using restorative justice practices. With all of this in mind, we need to make sure that we're taking time to look at what happens within the regular school building that's helping us to build positive relationships. Are we demonstrating genuine care and compassion? Are we displaying authentic value for people as individuals and what they bring to the table? And that's for everyone that's in the building. And I can tell you that as a school counselor, I have seen firsthand how emotionally intuitive students are, and they know when we are being real and when we're being authentic. There are already a lot of conversations that are taking place around ensuring an academically engaging and challenging environment. So looking at using academically meaningful learning activities in the classroom, which is something that I know as principals, you all are in constant conversation with your teachers about. I can tell you that in the counseling office, you know, I would have students who would say, I'm sitting in my classroom working on a Chromebook all day long. I can do that at home. And so do they really have a reason to show up and be in the building rather than thinking, oh, it's okay for me to just stay at home and do this work instead? Providing frequent feedback on learning as well as on behavior and attendance. Do you have learning supports that are in place to help students who are struggling? Looking at those learning supports that are offered both before the school day begins, after the school day ends, but also during the school day, so that transportation is not a barrier that's preventing students from being able to participate if they're only offered before and after the school day ends. Has your school created an attendance campaign? I'm sure every school probably has an attendance campaign, but really taking stock of what that attendance campaign looks like, and then evaluating its effectiveness. Again, are students receiving feedback on their attendance? Do they understand that missing as little as 2 days per month impacts learning? And I would say that that probably needs to be done not only with students, but also with parents as well. And so that family communication piece. Are there any procedures that are in place to incentivize attendance for students to show up and to come to school? One thing that Kentucky is really fortunate to have is that we offer a variety of data tools that help attendance teams to track and utilize attendance data. So for example, the chronic absenteeism report and the transient student reports that are both available in Infinite Campus are very useful tools for attendance teams to use to help identify students who are struggling. In addition, we also have some data visualization tools in Infinite Campus. My team specifically works with the early warning tool and then a newly released feature in Infinite Campus called Insights. And those are free of charge in Kentucky because of the contract that we have with Infinite Campus. The early warning tool specifically looks at risk factors and indicators for students who may not persist to graduation. So looking at that dropout prevention piece. Insights offers several different dashboards that include course progress, assessment, behavior, attendance, and stability reports that school level teams can use. The attendance reports allow users to look at trends, such as the most common reasons for absenteeism, the days of the week or the class periods that are most commonly missed. You can click on the features and it will populate the student names in all of these different categories. So it's just a really fast, easy tool for people to use, and you can customize the dashboard so that your attendance teams can pull the reports that they specifically need. They just have to have read tool rights in order to be able to access those. But those are some really powerful tools for attendance committees to be able to use. My team that I work on, the Persistence to Graduation team here with the Department of Education, offers training and support services to districts on how to use and implement those tools. So you all are welcome to reach out to us and we can connect with you on doing some district level training around those features and around those tools. And then I would say that students also provide some excellent data as well. So making sure that we're taking time to survey or interview students to find out why they are missing school, and the common barriers that they are struggling with, and see if you can find some trends within your building. And then finally, looking at how your school is engaging with families and the community. Establishing those positive family communication systems, looking at your home visit structure as a way to build bridges or to build a bridge with families. Do you have any community-based supports in place to help your families and your student body? Are family resource and youth service center supports available in your school for a student or for students and for families who need that extra level of assistance or layer of assistance? If they're not available in your school, then are there community-based resources that are available to connect your families with if they need another level of support to try and address some of those barriers that might be preventing students from coming to school? If you can go to the next slide. There are some other chronic absenteeism resources available. So on the KDE website, there's a variety of resources that are available for schools to use and review on the KDE chronic absenteeism webpage. That particular webpage is currently undergoing some revision, but the resources listed are still posted. If you do use it and you bookmark it, just know that in the coming weeks and months, there are going to be some changes to that particular website. But the information that's there will remain there. It might just move around a little bit. There's also a video for a presentation on chronic absenteeism that took place at the October meeting for the Interim Joint Committee on Education that's got some valuable information around chronic absenteeism as well. We have already mentioned Attendance Works. That particular organization has just a wealth of knowledge and resources available for schools to use. Two specific pieces to mention that are available on the website. There's a handout on developing an effective school team to help address chronic absenteeism. And then they have a really fantastic example of some tiered practices that schools can use. And so we would encourage you to look into those as well. And then last, on the KDE website, there are some data sets that you can use to look at information around chronic absenteeism as well. So we can move to the next slide. Before we finish, we just, I think that we all have a really good understanding about what the barriers are and what the problems are that we are seeing just across the state, across the country. And as Florence said, really it's an international issue as well. But we're curious as to whether or not your school or your district has found anything that is helpful in addressing the support that's needed for better attendance. So, we often look at those barriers, but looking at this from a solution-focused approach, does anybody have anything that you have found that really works? I think that conversation is beneficial and helpful for other people to hear and for other people to have. So if you have anything, feel free to unmute or to drop it in the chat. So I see a couple of questions in the chat. The chronic absenteeism report, and is it free for all districts? Yes, it is. It might be that you need to get with your district IC administrator to access rights to that. We can definitely share the slides, so we can post that. We'll make sure that we get with Stacy and that she can address that.
I will add with the home visits, and one of the states that is making big strides in this area is Connecticut. That is their #1 strategy. So they are doing a massive state level training on home visits. And the key to their home visits is to frame those visits around support and not punitive court, kind of not making it where it's, here's a summons for court kind of visit, but instead those visits are framed around, what's going on, how can we help you, what can we do to support you. So Connecticut is actually a great state, showing really evidence-based practices around home visits.
If anybody else if anybody has anything that they want to share that your school or your district is doing, like I said earlier, if you want to drop that in the chat, I think that it's really helpful for other people to see what's working, right? Because it just gives us an opportunity to brainstorm new ideas within our own schools and within our own district, and to pull from what's working for other people. So if there are any questions, we're happy to answer those. If not, Stacy, I think it's back to you.
All right, I do want to thank you ladies for being here and presenting on chronic absenteeism, a big problem, I think, for all of our districts. So next we have Impact Kentucky survey data with Ellie Gilbert.
Hello, I'm Ellie Gilbert. I am the Assistant Director of the Division of Educator Recruitment and Development. We are one day away from the end of the Impact Kentucky survey window. Not that I'm celebrating, but that will be a nice project to wrap up this semester with. So we're at 38,000 approximately responses, which is a little bit short of what we would like, but we feel like one more day will get us where we need to be. What I really wanted to talk to you about is we have contracted with our provider, Panorama. They provide some professional learning around the survey results. And so we're starting to plan for that in the spring. And I wanted to know what you wanted to learn about the survey, what kind of topics would help you as administrators sort out the data, figure out what to do with it. How can we help you use this tool? So that's really what I'm here for today, is to hear from you about that. So I will take suggestions, comments. You can drop them in the chat, or you can come off mute and tell me, and I will take note.
When will that data be released to us? Is there a timeline?
Late January, 1st of February. Just kind of depends on how that all comes out, but we will have it ready.
Okay, I didn't remember exactly. Okay, thank you.
I know they've provided trainings in the past, and they're not always the most exciting trainings. And so they are very willing to do whatever it is that we would like for them to do. So any ideas that you have, you can email me. Questions that have come up in the past for you. Just, kind of think about that as we're progressing towards that in the spring, but we're going to be setting those up. I'll probably meet with them. I'll meet with them the first week of January, and we'll set those up for late February to kind of discuss and debrief. Yeah, I was short and sweet. I mean, that's my style.
I think maybe we'll have some more questions when the data actually comes out.
I know. Just think about in the past what you've struggled with, what you want to do with the data, and kind of think about those things and send me emails. I am fully flexible and would love to make those sessions more relevant for you and more interesting as well.
All right. Well, if there is nothing else, I'll say a big thank you to Mrs. Ellie Gilbert, and we will move on to Principal Ed Camp with Miss Emily Satterley.
Good morning. The P3 team is looking forward to offering the 8th annual Principal Ed Camp on Wednesday, January 17th. Ed Camp is open to principals, assistant principals, aspiring principals, and other school leaders. Last year, over 300 principals and school leaders participated in this professional learning event. Ed Camp is 100% cost-free, and we will be offering it as a virtual event again this year. We're fortunate to have Dr. Kinney to offer the morning welcome. Our morning keynote speaker will be Jimmy Casas, who is the CEO and president of J. Casas and Associates, an educational leadership company aimed at serving teachers, principals, and superintendents in school districts across the country by providing high-quality, practical, and meaningful coaching support. Jimmy served 22 years as a school leader. He is a best-selling author, speaker, leadership coach, and a state and national award-winning principal. So we are very excited and fortunate to have Mr. Casas as our keynote speaker. We're also fortunate to have Mr. Wayne Young, General Counsel from KASA, to present a legislative update in the midday keynote. Our Ed Camp is for principals and by principals, so we'd like to encourage each of you to thoughtfully consider not only attending the event, but also to be a leader among leaders by presenting a 30-minute breakout session about any topic of interest to Kentucky principals. We will add a link in the chat box where you can visit to find out more about Ed Camp. This is also where you can register to attend or to submit a session proposal. If you know other principals who might be interested in presenting or attending, please share the link with those people as well. And we look forward to seeing everyone on January 17th.
Thank you very much, Ms. Satterley. And I know when we concluded our last meeting, we asked for topics for consideration for the next meeting, and we came up with two topics that were mentioned. And so the first of these, we have invited Ms. Christina Thomas, who is the Director of Accountability and Elementary Education, excuse me, in Laurel County Schools. And if you've kept up with any of the data releases, we know Laurel County is at the top of achievement in those. And we know there's more to the field than just high scores. And so, you know, I wanted to invite someone to talk a little bit about the success they had and how they've done it. And so Mrs. Noah and I were able to get together and talk about that. And so without further ado, Christina Thomas, thank you for taking time to be here, and I'll turn it over to you.
I'm sorry. Now can you hear me? Okay, great. Good morning. Thank you guys for having me. Tons of great information has been shared this morning. I wanted to type in the chat when Allison was presenting, amen. Just such great information that had me so fired up the day before Christmas break, which is typically pretty difficult to do. But thank you again for having me this morning. When we were asked to present, it was more around, you know, I feel like in Kentucky we have tons of data. We have the data, now what? You know, which set of data, what do I do with this data? Kind of even going back to the impact survey. We know we have these areas, now what do we do with it? So that's kind of what I'm going to speak about today. We start, I know I'll just kind of go through the different types of data that drives instruction, drives decision-making. When Allison was presenting, I kind of reflected a little bit about, I'm going to speak about the end result of and how we started with assessment and then worked our way backwards to kind of what Allison was presenting on HQIRs and how we started with assessment and the end in mind. And then finally we got to looking at, you know, our resources and HQIRs But we started that process with making sure assessments met the rigor of the standard, and very quickly did we realize we've created these assessments that meet the rigor of the standard, but now our resources do not, and we're not, we are not preparing and putting the resources in front of kids that prepare them for these assessments that meet the rigor of the standard. Standards Mastery Assessment, it's kind of the smallest piece of data that we look at. It's giving more frequently, weekly, bi-monthly. When we look at that as a district and from a school level, those questions, every single question, it goes through a process of principal revision, committee revision. Those questions, before those assessments are given to kids, it goes through several hands to ensure every question on that Standards Mastery Assessment meets the rigor of the standard. That was a long process. That was an uncomfortable process. But that was the quickest thing for us to do to ensure and work backwards kind of to what Allison was speaking about with resources. We get those Standards Mastery Assessments over standards that have recently been taught. Generally, those assessments throughout the district are 8 to 10 questions per standard, and that provides an in-depth look at the student's mastery level for each standard of the Kentucky State Standards. That we house all of that data through Standards Mastery assessments in. As a building principal, I just transitioned into the director role, but last year as a principal, I probably purchased 4 different technology houses for teachers. I wanted them to be use data to drive instruction, to drive remediation. So I bought whatever house that they wanted to house their data in that was user-friendly to them, and so that they could read it and use it. So that Standards Mastery Assessment, you can see the standard is at the top, and then the students' names are to the side. So that Standards Mastery Assessment data, along with the flashbacks, and we used a resource called Simple Solutions that was a spiral review. So that data was housed in there as well. So that data told us, where every student was with every standard. Very prescribed classroom instruction and remediation based off of this look of data. So that drove remediation, which students need to be remediated on this standard, what resources do I need to use to remediate, and then that also drives whole class instruction, flashbacks, reteach, small group differentiation, spiral review, focus and priority, and checks for understanding. So the data that you can kind of see there that I put a snapshot on there, that drove everything that we did. Diagnostic assessments in Laurel County, we use iReady, but I know throughout the state, many people use MAP, IXL. Of course, that's given, 2 to 3 times per year. That provided us an overview of students' progress and growth since the previous. It told me a lot about, Tier 1 instruction. Are the students performing at a proficiency level? If not, are we making stretch growth? And if not, why? What about those students that are not meeting either? We did a correlation and a linking study, and that provided us a strong prediction for end-of-year performance for each student, allowed us to predict that, and then perform some preventative measures as well on those students who predicted to not be proficient by the end of the year. So that linking study, how we did a correlation linking study of how ATWR diagnostic data correlated to KSA data, and what we found with that was with iReady, if they scored above the 50th percentile, you can see, 50 to 59th percentile, they were 72%, 73% more likely to score proficient on KSA. So that allowed us to really target the students who were not on track to meet proficiency by the end of the year to ensure that we were targeting the correct students. This chart, you can see at the top of that, that's percentiles on iReady, a nationally normed test. So you can see we've broken this down. This would be one teacher. I think this maybe would be reading, but they fill out this data. It is color coded. So this would be at the end of the year after the third diagnostic. I wanted them, as a building principal, I wanted them to do this data. You'll know what I mean. Elementary teachers, it kills their heart to put red on there. So a lot of questions around, well, why is this student red? Or, you know, the most common question was, you can see in that 30th to 39th, the second student down, I took names out for privacy, but you can see that student's scale score increased, but their percentile went down. So, you know, how on earth can a student go up in scale score, but their percentile go down? And just simply what that meant was the rest of the nation is growing students in this percentile greater and faster than what we are. So of course, you know, that did not sit well. So you can see across through there, you know, for the most part, those students, it allowed also, you know, an MTSS correlation of, are we targeting the right students in MTSS? You know, that's going to be those 1st through 9th, 10th percentile students that should be in your MTSS program. Those students scoring, you know, we put the thick black line there for a visual of these students. The correlation study showed that, you know, these students above the line and the 50th percentile, they're predicted to score proficient. So who are we sticking in remediation and the majority of our efforts in small group, in interventions? It's going to be those 20th to 49th percentile kids. So, you know, a lot of times for our teachers, when they're teaching 110 kids a day, 110 kids, that's a lot of kids. And we feel like, okay, I just have all of these kids. But whenever we were able to put this on the decile, each class period, you know, they were able to say, okay, really, I only need to target, you know, in my questioning, in my remediation, it allowed them a very specific targeted approach to, okay, now these six kids are who we need to get across the line. School-wide goal setting and accountability throughout K through 5. So through iReady, we were able, or a diagnostic, whatever that diagnostic may be in your district, in your school, school-wide goals, K through 5. You know, we'll post those all over, out beside every teacher's classroom. And K through 5, with that decile chart that I just showed you, you know, we have conversations around, I'm not expecting you to get 100% of those kids across the line, but K through 5 in reading, we do have to get 84% of those kids across the line. So a lot of times, and coming from middle school to elementary to be a principal, I felt like my 3 through 5 were held accountable, but how on earth do I hold, with what piece of data do I hold K1 and 2 in primary to the same accountability that 3 through 5 is held? And that decile chart was the answer for the school that I was previously principal at, because, you know, our KSA goals were 84 and 87. Okay, so directly with that decile chart that was just previously on the screen, okay, let's meet, let's talk about this. Every single teacher in the school, what students do we have to move in order for every teacher in the school to get 84% of their kids across that line? And I liked what Allison said before. You know, at first they're going to say, you know, I can't do it, and tell you all about those kids' home lives and everything about them. But it was not a half year into that process that, you know, we were meeting those goals in December just because the conversation was there. It was a more targeted approach that they could see okay, now these 3 kids are the kids that I need to meet with during remediation and form those small groups around. Sending that on down the line to student goal setting K through 5. Every student, we are huge believers in reward and recognition. So every student got rewarded and recognized if they met one of the 2 goals. So the 2 goals was to be above the 50th percentile, essentially proficiency, and then the other side of that they could earn reward and recognition would be to meet their stretch growth goal on iReady. iReady go sets that for every student, and so in December, if they met half of that stretch growth goal, they earned the Glow Dance Party or whatever it was for each school. And then at the end of the year, it was a field trip for every student who either met one of the 2 above the 50th percentile or their entire stretch growth goal. That speaks to parents. They don't want it speaks to teachers and parents. Teachers do not want, a student not to earn the reward. So I found a huge sense of urgency, a step up in urgency throughout the building when, we inform teachers and parents, everybody in the buildings being held accountable, and here's our expectations, and here's how students are going to be recognized and rewarded. A huge step up in urgency on all stakeholders. So the last piece of data that we'll look at is KSA. We've gotten that in, and looking at that, and again, that's kind of a backwards approach. I'll show you how when that last piece of data comes in, then we kind of start the process over again in revision and looking at our processes and systems again. So, we will put KSA data on this decile chart, and, were there any surprises in student performance levels? For the most part, there's not. This decile chart projected our proficiency within 1/10 of a point on KSA. So we have found it to be a very strong predictor of where our kids, therefore, not just predicting, but okay, this is where it's predicting. Now, what do we do about it? What are we going to do to get that student over the line? And then the last thing that we will look at is, the chart on the right side of the page, the dark blue, that was our standards mastery data class-wide. I showed you in the first part of the slide, the student names down, and then the standards at the top. At the bottom of that data housing, it would tell us what's our class average for the entire class, and the standards mastery percentage for that standard, and that for the entire class. So you can see on RI 3.3, the class average was a 75. So looking back at standards mastery assessment, the first piece of data that we look very closely at, when we were given the released items and that percentage for our school, what we immediately look at is, this is for RI 3.3. Do our standards mastery assessment, does that data match up to the released item percentages, essentially stating, are our standards mastery assessments to the rigor of what the standard and then the state assessment, the summative assessment that we're expecting kids to perform on at the end of the year. And then, so that just gives us, the validity of the classroom test assessment, and then, revision processes begin at that point if the data does not match up. I think that's everything. I know I covered a lot in a small amount of time. Do you all have any questions?
I have a question for you, Christina. It's Sarah Kaz. I spoke to you on email. I do have a question. Is this work that you do during PLC work? Is it work that you do after school? Like when is most of this work with, looking at your standards, looking at your assessments and your data? When is most of that work completed with your staff?
It kind of depends on where you are in the process. We did a lot of that work. I held a PD Academy at our school where teachers came in. We did vertical alignment with standards and standards mastery assessment. So, 2nd through 5th grade, we would get out our standards mastery assessment for 0.1, 2.1, 3.1, and that. When you're in a small elementary school, what I have found coming from middle school, I was used to PLCs in middle school that there were 5 people at that PLC revising those standards mastery assessments. You had 5 people bringing things to the table. A lot of the times in elementary school, 2 people per grade level. If it's a small elementary, 2 people per grade level, you have 1 teaching reading and 1 teaching math. It's just them. So we had a lot of vertical alignment meetings in the summer, and then if it was something that happened throughout the year, once we got there and we had a standards mastery assessment for every standard, that revision process was definitely during PLCs with me and that 1 teacher.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Hi, Christina. It's Brian Ehrenberg. I had a question. I know we talked a little bit about elementary. Is this kind of a similar process that the middle and high school uses in Laurel County as well?
It is. They use iExcel. The middle schools use iReady, and their processes are exactly the same. That goes through 8th grade. We've also found a strong correlation in the deciles and with middle school assessment scores. We are currently in the development of doing that with the correlation and linking study with iExcel for high school. We're in doing that right now for this year. We'll have that data up on KSA release data in 2024.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
You may have said this and I might have missed it, but the correlation study that you did, is that just within district, or was that in cooperation with iReady, or how did that come about?
Great question. I previously was in Madison County, and we did a linking study in Madison County with iReady as well. And then when coming back to Laurel County, iReady, we did sign on to participate in iReady's linking study. They had that, but we also ran our own because across districts, just the emphasis that's put on iReady, the recognition and rewards are that can be different across all districts and even with 11 schools. So we have that linking study per school, and then for Laurel County, and then iReady has one as well. Insanely enough, I thought, I knew how we did things at the elementary school that I was at, and then I know how different that looks all over just in Laurel County. Our elementary schools are so different. I was so surprised to find that the iReady linking study and the research and data that we had done here, even though the schools are so different and they had done that all across the state, the data was pretty much the same. Very close.
All right. Well, I think that we've had our questions, and I do want to thank you, Ms. Thomas, for being here and presenting. It's been very helpful, and hopefully we can take some information away from this as principals and utilize it. Yeah.
Thank you. I'll put my email in the chat. It is a little different just leaving the district. It does have a 2 behind my last name, so I don't get a lot of emails that come to me because of that. So I'll put that in there. Feel free to, if you have any questions, I'm happy to help anytime.
Thank you so much. All right, next we have Miss Lori DeHart. She's with us from KEDC here in Ashland, and she's going to speak about some mental health resources.
Okay, thank you for having me, Brian, and the committee. I want to share my screen, so I'm not super familiar with Teams. I usually use Zoom for meetings. So if I use the share button, will that allow me to do that?
Yeah, it should work.
Okay. Hopefully I won't waste too much time. While I'm trying to bring this up, I'll just introduce myself. My name is Lori DeHart, and I'm a behavior consultant at KEDC. That's Kentucky Educational Development Corporation. As Brian said, that's there in Ashland, Kentucky, and we also have a satellite office in Lexington, Kentucky. But I am a former teacher, special education teacher of students with emotional and behavior disabilities. And I've been working as a behavior consultant at KEDC for the last 18 years. In my role, I work with 21 school districts in northeastern Kentucky. And so I come in contact with a lot of administrators, a lot of teachers, paraprofessionals, everybody who works in the schools. And in my role, I provide a lot of professional development to all of those roles, as well as go in when it's needed to provide some support to the schools. It could be class-wide support, school-wide support, or individual student support. Okay. So I do lots of different things, and then everything else special education wise as well. I'm not able to pull this up, so I don't know why it's not even bringing that up as a option. Wait, maybe I figured it out as I was sitting there talking. Sorry about this. So as you all know, emotional behavior concerns in the school are absolutely a crisis. I think that our schools are in crisis a lot of times. That's what I hear from administrators and teachers across the state and across our region. But I think I'm just going to have to talk without that, if you all are okay with that. I can provide that later. I don't want to keep you waiting on this. But anyway, I just want to go over just some data around the impact of mental health concerns in our schools. So about 50% of all cases of mental illness, they begin at a very young age, around the age of 14, and then 75% by the age of 24. So that's pretty scary within itself. And we know that mental health concerns occur much earlier as well in our students. I mean, I've worked with students for many years, and we have kids that are coming to us in preschool and kindergarten with mental health diagnosis. And I'm sure that each one of you are well aware of that, and you see that all the time. So it is truly a crisis. And the average delay between the onset of the symptoms and the intervention is 8 to 10 years. So that's a little bit scary to me. So what that is saying is that these kids, they have this onset of the symptoms, but yet as far as interventions to help support that student is not occurring until many years later. And we all know the importance of early intervention for any type of issue with our students. Whether it be, I've heard it this morning, lots of great presentations around literacy and the attendance issue. All of this plays into the ladies talking about the attendance issue discussed the issue around anxiety, and we know that that has increased immensely since even since COVID. I think it's gotten much, much worse. But about 37% of students with mental health condition, age 14 and older, do drop out of school. So there's that higher dropout rate for these students, as well as 70% of the youth in the state in the state and local juvenile justice systems have a mental illness as well. So I'm sure you're not surprised about that at all. So I'm just going to open it up. I want you all to answer, what is your biggest concern right now in your schools around behavior? Behavior. What are you seeing the most of? And if you don't mind, unmute. Again, I apologize for not being super familiar with Teams, but I just want to hear what is going on in your schools.
I would say one of the big issues we're seeing is students being able to regulate themselves when things don't go well. You know, what used to be, you know, a minor incident that you know we can work through, it blows up much quicker than what I was seeing in the past.
Yeah, and you're not the only one. That is one of the biggest issues that I'm hearing from everyone working in the schools, is that issue of emotional regulation. Our students lack those skills, and even if they have the skill, they know what to do, we have a lot of students who are also not performing the skill as we would want them to, if they do actually have that skill. So emotional regulation is a big issue, and I will go ahead and give you one resource that a lot of school districts in my region are beginning to use school-wide, not just individual student, but is the zones of regulation. Is anyone using that or heard of the zones of regulation? But it can be applied school-wide, class-wide, or with an individual student. So that's my typical go-to resource for teaching emotional regulation skills. And when you think about emotional regulation skills, you've also got to think about, okay, what are the prerequisites to those emotional regulation skills? First of all, we have to make sure that our students understand emotions. Can they identify emotions in other people? And then can they identify those emotions in themselves? They're not going to be able to self-regulate without having that knowledge, okay? And then, you know, something else that I also hear a lot around, you know, emotional regulation is students not having empathy. Are you all feeling that as well? Are you hearing that? Are you seeing that? And when you think about empathy, it goes back to that, you know, understanding emotions, but we have to teach a lot of times intently the skill of perspective taking. If they don't understand, if they can't put themselves in someone else's shoes, then it's really hard for them to empathize with anyone. Okay. So we just go back to some of these really, you know, sometimes we have to just break things down into what skills are they missing in order to get to that skill of, let's say, emotional regulation. And those are just little pieces of it. But those are some things that, you know, I want you to think about. I didn't even include that in the resources, but I will get this to you, Brian, on I have some resources for you all that are national resources and links for those resources. I have some state resources. We have lots of things that have been a lot of initiatives in our state today, and I'm sure that a lot of you are participating in a lot of those initiatives, or you've been trained in a lot of those areas. But a lot of this first came about with the Kentucky Aware Grant several years ago, the first Aware Grant. As a co-op, we have role groups, behavior consultants. There are 8 special education consultants in the state, and each has a behavior consultant. And we meet on a monthly basis where we discuss statewide issues, we develop things, but we also partner with a lot of other agencies in the state. And I think that that has been so very helpful for us, because now we are able to provide trainings around trauma-informed strategies for educators. We worked a lot with the UK Center for Trauma in Children, who provided that training to us, and in turn, we provided a lot of trainings to our districts. So that would be another resource whenever you're looking at, around some potential mental health concerns. Another piece that came out of that was the training for youth mental health first aid. I don't know if you all have been trained in that, but currently I'm working with a district in Southern Kentucky that they're training their entire school district on youth mental health first aid. So I'm going in and providing that training as well. But those are just 2 areas that have resources to districts that have emerged through the collaboration between different agencies in the state. One thing that I want to really focus on is, our system. What are we currently doing? How well is your system supporting the behavior and emotional needs of your students in your school? There is another piece of that came out of that AWARE grant was work with the Midwest PBIS network on interconnected systems framework. So that framework, if you think about our multi-tiered system of support, and on one side is academics and on the other side is behavior, taking that behavior and slicing it down the middle, and not only looking at behavior, but looking at that emotional piece. So that's the interconnected systems framework, is that side of that triangle. And thinking about what are you providing at tier one and at tier 2 and tier 3 for to address not only behavior, but the emotional piece. Just by someone, you all telling me what you're currently doing, or do you have are you using a behavior screener at this point? And if so, which screener is your district using? Is anyone using one at this time? Anything coming through the chat? Okay, I'm seeing that we are not.
We are using an SEL screener, but I do not know the exact name of it, but it is free. It's online, and we're only doing it with our 3rd and 5th grade at the elementary level, and we're screening them 3 times a year. And the next step is looking at what kind of intervention type plans can we do to kind of offer some strategies for those at-risk students.
Yeah. And, within your system, that's going to be one piece that is going to enhance your system, is being able to identify the students who are at risk or who've required those interventions. So that's what you could be using is a screener that's called the SS. Sorry, it just completely left me. It's developed by Kathleen Lane, and it'll come back to me in a minute. Anyway, that one. Thank you. That is the website. Yes. So with that screener, the nice thing about it is, first of all, it identifies internalizing as well as externalizing behaviors. When it was first developed, it only focused on the externalizing behaviors, and they've improved that over the years to include that. And it's really simple to for teachers to complete. It's only supposed to take about 15 or 20 minutes to complete, but it gives you a lot of really good data to determine who needs, those behavioral and emotional supports in your school. So having a screener would be one resource that I would look at. The SRSSIE is the name of that screener. Something else that I just want to, if you are not familiar with the Interconnected Systems Framework, just to give you an idea of, it helps to take your system and to try to break down those silos of, you've got mental health providers who are coming in and working in your schools, but everybody is not working together. You may have your PBIS system as well, but you're only including, whenever you're looking at the students who need interventions, you're not including those mental health folks to help to identify interventions for those students who need those types of supports. So it's a way to integrate those systems and make it much more efficient and effective for our students in order to meet their needs. So a couple of other things, I'm not going to keep you much longer at all, but a couple of state resources that I want you to be aware of. I've been fortunate to be a part of the planning and execution of the Behavior Institute. It's a fantastic conference that occurs every 2 years. I hope that you've had the opportunity to attend that. Our next one is coming up in July of 2024. It will be the 15th and the 16th. We have over 2,000 participants every time we have the Behavior Institute. It's a place that you can send your teachers, your paraprofessionals, your mental health folks who are working in your schools, the administrators, and you can get lots of resources to support student behavior and mental health. Okay. And then also I want to put a plug in for our special education co-ops, because we do provide a lot of training around behavior and mental health supports in the schools. So I will get that link to Brian for you to be able to access the Google Doc that has lots of resources there for you. Okay. I apologize that my PowerPoint did not come up. I'm sorry. Teams I'm just not familiar with it, but I appreciate your time. Any questions before I go? Okay.
All right, Mrs. DeHart, thank you so much for being here. And when you forward that to me, I'll send it out to the group.
I will forward it to you now. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Bye. Bye-bye.
Next item on our agenda here is, we have two things, both with Mrs. Stacy. So, and I'll turn it over to her.
All right, thank you. Well, quickly, I just wanted to share with you a request. They're in the process of finding a new vendor for the school report card. So there is a live survey that's been shared widely, but very important that principals take the time to complete this survey. And in the slide deck, in the notes part, you should be able to find that direct link to the school report card survey. So just wanted to number one, ask you to take the time to provide that feedback. And then secondly, if you wouldn't mind, to share it widely. So anybody within your school and district, maybe outside your district, other principals, school leaders, district leaders, of course, we just encourage you to share that link and let folks know that they are in the process of refining that a bit. And then the second thing I wanted to just touch base about was the PCEL possible examples. Last year, Each PRAC member was kind of assigned a particular time frame to start working on these possible examples. And unfortunately, we've not gotten these possible examples completed. So I wanted to just solicit information from the group regarding what is the best way to kind of team up, partner up, maybe work collectively on the revision of these possible examples. And that's just something I want to throw at you to think about. And you can follow back up with me through email, just giving some suggestions about what works best for you. Maybe it's something that we come together in the summer and work on. Maybe it's something that we team up with and just have some small group virtual work sessions. Totally open to suggestions. However you all want to do it, what would work best for you is absolutely what we'll do. So if you don't mind just to follow up with an email and give me some guidance around that, that would be most helpful. And then just transitioning here, you can see save the date, March 14th and June 13th. Those are our two upcoming meetings for this particular school year. So just wanted to make sure everyone had that calendar invitation. And if you do not, please, of course, reach out to me and I can forward. And that's it.
All right, before we adjourn real quick, I wanted to mention if there's any suggested topics for next meeting that you guys would like us to maybe secure speakers on or speak about directly, you can go ahead and put it in the chat, or you're welcome to email Mrs. Noah or myself, and we'll work on that for the next meeting in March. So that takes us to an adjournment. So I do need a motion in a second. So again, I'll ask that you unmute and say your name and that you're making a motion.
Nick Brooks, I'll make the motion to adjourn.
Thank you.
Jared Hankins, I'll second.
Thank you. And please state your agreement in the chat at this time. And I think we did pretty good on time today. So I appreciate everyone being here. Good luck with the rest of your days, getting through to Christmas break, and I wish you guys health and happiness.